Hello there, this is Brian Garrick. Today I wanted to talk to you about some of the engagements that we have here at the Eccles Theater in Salt Lake City, specifically talking about the Broadway Across America engagements and some of the expectations that may be made of you if you are the head electrician on those engagements. Of course, you're going to be focusing on leading the crew and working with the touring production, making sure that everything gets up safely and everything works properly, mostly focusing on safety. But there are some other things that may be expected of you, so we're just going to go through this, talking about some of the different types of performances we have, such as with the ASL signers and also for the open caption. So I'm just going to go through it and talk to you about this. One of the first things that you should do at the top of the day, aside from discussing what you do in the advance, which we're going to get into the next slide, is just kind of go over some of the house rules. As of now, the beginning of 2026, these are the house rules as follows for the Eccles Theater in Salt Lake City. The house lead electrician, so the county electrician that also works in the building, they're going to be the ones completing the main connections for the company switches. Touring people and yourself are able to do the cross connections between different PDs, but for the main connections that go directly into the company switch, they're going to make that and then they're going to energize it once you're ready for that. And then the 99 Head LX, being yourself, will be making the disconnects on the out. And that's just for the company switches. They can do whatever they want to do for their PDs. The head carp is going to be calling all of the line sets, so any line sets that they need brought in or out for the cable crossovers, or any other line sets that are just going to be used for hanging fixtures on the pipe. They're going to be calling that in. But if they're running truss, if they're running motors, they can run their own motors, of course. For haze save conditions, just let them know to let you know when they want to haze. Typically, that won't be done until like continuity, but if they do want to check it before, just make sure that all the doors are closed, including the bay doors. That's very important. Are closed, and the fire alarms are set to fire watch. So you're going to want to call the technical director and make sure they set that to fire watch mode, or just make sure they're clear to haze. And then once all that is done, you can let them know that they are clear to haze. Also, you want to make sure that you check in with the head carp before going into show conditions backstage. That's going to be if they want to do a blackout check for the opening night, or just every single time that you're getting out of works into show conditions. Just make sure that everything's clear backstage before you turn off everything. For the load-in, you want to make sure that you're kind of killing some of the lights in the center of the grid, so that the upriggers can see the lasers. So just make sure that you do that. There's a pre-show preset on the paradigm, so just make sure you have that turned on. All right, continuing on, we're going to discuss the advance email. I have an example of one of the advances that I did for a recent engagement, so we're going to go into that real quickly. This one was a bit of a shorter one. The show wasn't super huge, didn't have a lot of crazy stuff to go with it, but we're just going to go down the line and kind of discuss who I include in this email, the stuff that I do touch on, and how I go about doing these advances. So I typically like to title them like this, where whatever the show's name is, Welcome to the Eccles Theater in Salt Lake City, just so it's easy for me to reference it and go back to it. I also archive all of my advances along with the tech writers in my Trello. So I make sure to put that in there just for archival purposes if I need to get back and reference it later. I'll also make a note of saying that a lot of these writers are pretty repetitive, so they may ask very similar questions to each other. So it's just nice to have them as a backup, so you just go back, copy and paste your responses, so you're not spending too much time thinking about how far is that, like what is the foot candle distance between the balcony rail and the plaster line. Just making sure that you have that information easily available to you is very good. All right, so typically sometimes we get an advance and also a tech writer. I will always start with the advance because that's the more relevant information. Tech writers go out of date really, really quickly, so I typically start with that, and then I cover the writer. So in this one, I started with the advance. They had a question about deck electricians, and so I deferred that to the steward so that they can make a decision on that. They had a special request for house lights. They wanted an effect at the beginning of the show, and I just let them know that they cannot go under the house out preset just for safety reasons. Continuing on with the front of house, they say that they don't travel with conventionals, and so they wanted to use our conventionals. Everything in the front of house is 750 watts ETC source 4 LECOs, which they're all benched, and also their lenses are cleaned. So just let them know that we have those and that they're able to be used. Typically, the balcony rail is cleared, so if they need stuff on the balcony rail, you're going to want to pre-hang that during the strip the day before. And yeah, continuing on with that, I tried to use all of their gel and their frames and their gobos and stuff just so that we're not mixing too much equipment. It just makes things a lot easier on the out to use their gear. So whenever possible, I always say to use their gear, unless it's far more convenient for you to use yours. Let's see here. They had two different plans for the front of house, which I'm going to show in a little bit. One of them was using box booms, and the other one was using cove positions. Our cove is really, really easy to get into because we have an elevator up to it. With the box booms, you need to get a ladder and go through the audience box booms in order to get to those hanging positions. And we don't have a ton of circuits out there, so it's far easier to hang from the cove. Depends on the show, of course. Every show is different, but typically, for a lot of times in this venue, I try to use the cove whenever possible. Anything else here? Talking about hanging vipers and stuff. Typically from the balcony rail, the vipers, or just a lot of larger moving heads, they're typically not that heavy. They may be at most 100 pounds, which is pretty easy to lift with just a rope and a bowline tied to it. So typically easy to just pull it up with maybe one or two people. Not a big deal with that. We do also have two quarter-ton peanut motors out there for hanging projectors and such. Continuing on, all of the atmospherics orders are going to be handled by the Broadway Across America representative. So they're going to be ordering all that stuff in advance and just confirming what atmospheric needs they may have. And yeah, just reminding them again in the email how to get into the firewatch mode for haze-safe conditions. Talking about more, just about the hanging positions. In retrospect, 19-degree lenses were not suited for that. We've used 19-degree lenses for curtain warmers, and those are great for that, and it's a much wider circle. But for this instance, we switched them to 10 degrees to better suit the focus. All right, after all the advanced stuff, I go into the writer, which talks about power requirements. Typically, we like to land dimmer beach on stage right and put audio on stage left, because audio, we have the isolated ground on stage left, and we just have a lot more room to work with on stage right, out of the way of the bay doors. Continuing on, just talking about qualified personnel for the hookups, for the in and out. Broadway deck is about 17 feet long, 8 feet deep. From stage right to the front of house, we have a direct pipe that is 275 feet. Say about 300, just to make sure that we have plenty of slack and extra cable to make that distance. But it is roughly around 275 feet, and it is a direct pipe back to front of house. Most of the front of house looms are going to be about 300 feet, just for reference. Continuing on. Yep, we have all the stuff for that. Make sure that everything is stripped. On the day before the load-in, you're going to come in for a strip, which means taking down all of the rep hang over stage. And so that's going to be including the 3 electrics that are on stage, making sure that everything is taken out of the way, because these Broadway shows are very tight. They don't have a lot of room to adjust from pipe to pipe. So you got to make sure that everything is stripped in advance and letting them know that it will be happening. And they say they need to control some house dimming equipment through DMX. We have 4-port gateways on stage left and also stage right, so you can easily tie into DMX control through dry lines there. And you can set the input and output for the DMX using the ETC Concert, which we have a project PC in the lighting booth for you to use. Great, and they said that they talk about front of house. There's a lot of stuff in the front of house, so that's why they keep talking about it. They talked about that they only had one follow spot operator, and that's part of the tour. They wanted to make sure that we had the best equipment possible for that. We have three Lycian 1295 Extreme long throw. They are 3K, and they're an excellent working condition. We've had some flickering issues in the past, but those have been resolved. Great. Yeah, like I said, not too much to this one. They asked about just backstage run lights. We have LED pars on either side of the stage, which are just set to on and off that we can control with the paradigm. And we also have Chroma Q Color Force 72s on line set 77 that work great for backstage crossover lighting. I'm going to show you how I set those up in just one moment in the show file. They gave me a pre-warning about some of the sensory issues, but we typically put out a sign saying that there's going to be atmospherics and strobing effects in the shows, which is fairly common with these Broadway engagements. Aside from all that information, I do look back at my past writers and see what other information may be relevant, which I include at the end here, which is other important information. Talking about cable paths, how we have lots of mouse holes and hooks and cable ramps in order to get everywhere and make sure everything is nice and safe backstage. The rail queue lights, that's downstage right at the proscenium wall, which we have a breakout to connect into that. Let's see here. For ASL, we'll tie them into the dimmers, and I tell them that we already have some specials there already pointed in place. We have hardline internet on each four corner of the stage. It has marked with a little red dot there, so you can tie them in right there. And we have lots of 15 amp outlets for work boxes and gondolas and such. Great. And yeah, they just kind of confirmed saying that everything looks good and that the CO2 is going to be ordered. And yeah, not too much to it. Really not too complicated. There may be some weird instances. If there's any electrical stuff that you need more clarification with the house, you can talk to the lead electrician in the house, and they'll be better suited to answer that for you. Talking to them and then you responding to the tour with your answers. Any atmospheric stuff, especially like fire stuff, you may want to talk to the house TD. I did forget to mention who I include. My apologies for that. So in my email, sorry, we're going back and forth. I'm going to be including the tour people, which is typically just their head electrician for the tour, maybe their assistant, maybe their head carpenter. But typically I just start with the head electrician. I'm going to be including the lead electrician for the building, the steward / head carpenter for our building, and also the technical director and the Broadway Across America representatives. Those are all the people that are most relevant to these email engagements. Anyone that you may forget to include on it, just make sure to forward it to them before the tour's arrival. Great. Going past that, we're going to go right into the show file. So for this, I did make a previous video talking about how to use ETC Concert. So if you want information on how to use that, you can go and reference that video. You can see it listed here on the bottom. But what's really important is for the front of house, if you're using LEDs, you want to make sure that those are set to switched mode because we have through power modules with sensor 3 racks. So you want to make sure that those are set to switch. That is what ETC recommends for LED fixtures. It's just basically switching it from a dimmer to a relay. And so you want to use that just for safety for their fixtures. I do have some macros set for on and off so that it's very easy for when you get into the building at the beginning of the day. It turns on everything in the front of house. It sets all the work lights and all that, and it sets you into the beginning of the queues for running house lights. I'm also going to show you how to run the work lights and for playback of the show. Great, so let's get into that. You can see here I already have our show file booted up. Well, actually, before I get into this, let me show you one more thing. Here we are. You may get a sheet like this if you want to fill it out. I typically just ask the assistant electrician to send me all the relevant information as they're going to be one leading the hang for the front of house. So they're going to be choosing what dimmers are, what circuits are going to be closest to powering these LEDs. So you can see here that we have written down here for the Vipers, circuit 54, 48, 42, 36, and then 2 here in the cove position. No, this is the balcony position, 160 and 159. Great. So when going into this, I have a couple couple macros that you can find here in the pop-up magic sheet and also on the soft keys on the top of the console. If I want to go to my macros, I can find them right here, tab 18. Beginning here, 808. I can scroll this down, make it a little bigger so it's easier for you to read it. And you can see here, basically what this, I covered this in a separate video, but I'm just going to go over it really quickly here. So basically when you start up the console and you hit the green button there, it's going to clear the command line, go to queue out, take everything out. It's going to sneak everything, clear all the manual data. It's going to wait 5 seconds just to make sure that all that stuff goes away. It's going to open up blind and it's going to turn on the power for, oh wait, never mind. This is the wrong one. This is the shutdown. My apologies. 807 here. All right, clear the command line. It's going to go to the first queue, Q1/1. It's going to wait 5 seconds, 998 at full park, and so that's going to be the power for the crossover lights. 331 through 340 at 20. That's a good intensity that I like to set. You may want to work with the Head Electrician and their CARP, making sure that, if you're doing a blackout check, make sure that the backstage is what the crew prefers. Sometimes for really dark shows like Les Mis, you've had to go and change the intensity for like the par lights because they are manual. You have to go up to the jump to turn those down. But for the crossover lights, very easy. Just go in there and choose whatever intensity you like. Typically, I find that 20% is a good intensity for these guys, and I set them to Lee 75, 3/75. That's a good like kind of purplish, like bluish color, which is nice for costumers to see a little bit more color backstage instead of just a flat blue. Waits 3 seconds to make sure that all that is applied, and then it goes back to park, and then it selects the addresses that we had. Before you want to turn these on, you want to make sure that you go into your ETC concert, set them to switched, and upload that data to the racks before you turn them on. You don't want to have them turned on as dimmers and then switch them to switched. That may cause issues in your rig. So if you do need to do that, you accidentally power them on as dimmers, turn them off, set them to switched, update it, and then power them back on. So the ones we had, 36, 42, 48, 54, 159, 160 at full park. Waits 3 seconds, make sure all that is applied, clears the command line, sneaks manual data, clears the command line, and goes back to our snapshot here. Great. Sorry if you hear a little bit of raining in the background. If you want to edit these, you can go down here to the bottom of the soft key. That's going to be soft key number 6. You can hit edit, and you can use your arrows to go up and down. You can see here, I can just go here. You can't hit delete on the keyboard because that's going to say that's the actual delete key. You want to use the soft key down here in order to delete values. Just like that. And then when you're done, hit done. You're going to want to do the same thing sorry, I need to use this guy. 808 here. Going back into the shutdown. Clears the command line, goes out. Sneaks all the manual data if there are any, waits 5 seconds, opens up the park, takes out all the channels here for the crossover 331 through 340 at enter. So it takes out all the data, waits 2 seconds, kills the power for it, waits 2 seconds again, turns off all of the circuits in the front of house for the LEDs, waits 2 seconds, goes back to live, clears the command line, sneaks all the manual data just to be safe, saves the show, waits 5 seconds, and then asks you if you want to power down. So let's see that in action here. So if you want to open up our pop-up magic sheet and I hit on, you can see here on the bottom, you can see it working. So we're in the first queue now, and now we're powering up the crossover lights. You can see the P there, meaning that it's parked. So this is the manual data, and now you can see that it's parked there. For the crossover lights, sneaks out all that data, and then it's going to bring us back to our snapshot. Fairly simple. If you want to double check, make sure that everything is correct, you can go into our park, which is tab 20 here. 331 through 340 is at 20. It's at Lee 75. It's got power to it, and all of our stuff in the front of house is energized. I like to put these in as addresses just so I can keep it separated from some of the typical stuff that I use. You don't need to set these as channels. You may if you wish. That's up to your own discretion. Great. And now, before I do the shutdown macro, I'm going to show you how to set it into work lights. So if I were to go into work lights, I could go, I can just open up tab 20. I can do tab 20 like that. 331 through 340. For work lights, I like to do like 50%. That's a good intensity without it getting too blaring on you. And I also like to set these to a nice kind of warm white. So I go into my standard colors here, and I like to choose 5400 Kelvin, equal energy. Choose that. You can see that that's already applied there in the park. Of course, if you want to go back, 331, oops. That was interesting. I haven't seen that before. Tab 20. Probably just a misclick there. Through 340. At 20. At 3-75. Always be sure to check this before going into show conditions, because if you're not backstage, you're not going to know what the lights look back like. Great. So that is applied. We can go out of this. I'm also going to show you the run of show. So I'm going to go to tab 2 here. You can see that we've already got our house full look up. About 5 minutes to the GO, to the start of the show. They're going to take roll call, make sure that you're standing by. So at the beginning, just announce that you're there. And then they're going to give you a standby for the going to half, and then house out. And they're going to give you a standby, and they're going to say house to half, go. You're going to go. And then once it gets to 0, you're going to say complete. Then they're going to say house out, go. And then you're going to say complete. About an hour later, if it's a 2-act show, they're going to ask you if you're there, and you just say standing by. Then they're going to say house lights up or house to full, go. Again, you're going to announce complete. About 20 minutes after an intermission, they're going to take roll call again, and then they're going to give you a standby for house to half, go. Complete is what you're going to say. And then lastly, for house out, go. Complete. Another hour goes by. All the bows start happening. There may be Broadway cares at the end, or they may make some special announcement. I've had all weird sorts of things, such as like when we had Beautiful Noise, they did a FaceTime with Neil Diamond when it was his birthday at the end of the show. But you'll know when it's coming after they do all the bows and such. They're going to give you a standby for house to full, asking if you're there, say that you're standing by, and then they're going to give you house to full, go. Complete is what you're going to say. Fairly simple. About 5 minutes or so, once the house starts going out, they're going to ask you for work lights so you can bring back the works. After going around and setting the ghost light and such, you're going to come back to the console and you're going to do your off. So click your off, and you can see that sneaking everything, going out of the queues. Well, it opens up park, and it takes all the stuff out, all the crossover lighting, power, saves the show, sneaks all the manual data. It's going to wait just a couple seconds to make sure everything's done. I always just do another double check. There's nothing here loaded in my master fader. I don't see anything that is parked, and so then you can power off your device. Yeah, and it goes like that. Lovely. Always remember at the end of the show to set and take away your ghost light once you come in the next day. Very simple stuff there. So yeah, we talked about how to set everything to switched, macros, setting work lights, and playback of the show. Talk about that. All right, ASL interpreters. One of the weird ones. Depending on how long the show runs, if it's a week-long engagement like most of them are, you're going to have one night with ASL interpreters, and then you're going to have one matinee show with the open captions. So for ASL, there's going to be 2 seats here over on house left, right in front of the pit. They're not pictured in this, but they're screwed down with just some hand screws. If they're in your way, you can just pick them up and send them to the side. Let the technical director know that there's ASL tonight and that they need to come and grab the chairs. So they'll come and grab a cart and take them out of your way. You're going to make sure that they are tied in. You can do this during the load-in, or you can do it later depending on what your schedule works like. But it's just going to be circuits 1 and 20. I always make sure to check the focus at the beginning. Sometimes it changes if the signers decide to stand, or if they decide to sit, or if they want to use stools or stuff like that. Or maybe there's only one. Maybe they want to stand a little bit off to the side. It really depends on what signers you get and what the people who are hard of that are hard of hearing need for where they need to stand. It changes every single time is what I'm trying to say. I like to grab in advance when we're doing our checkout. I grab 2 cushion chairs. I don't grab the shitty folding ones that have no padding on them. I try to grab them some nice chairs, 2 music stands, 2 clip lights, make sure that they are gelled with a blue. So I grab all that stuff. Sometimes it changes. Sometimes there's 3 signers. Sometimes there's only 1. Sometimes they don't want any stands, or maybe they just want 1 stand. It really changes every time, but this is the typical setup that I have ready because it's easier. I've only had one instance where there was 3 signers, and I think that was for Les Mis. But other than that, this is typically how it goes. I like to just put 2 out. If they just want 1 of whatever, I can just take it away and quickly stash it backstage instead of having to go and find it. I also grab a 25-foot extension cable with a tri-tap so that I can connect the 2 stand lights together. And I also have a stage pin to Edison adapter if needed. If there's a show that has sudden blackouts and they want everything in the house to black out, including the stand lights, you can tie them into a dimmer there and also add that to their control list. So yeah, I just have that. You can see some of the cable pathing here. Sorry, it's kind of a crude drawing. But they're going to be sitting right here in the picture that I showed you. Cable pathing, I like to go back here right up to the pit. And I kind of try to tuck the cable in between this little stand here, making it nice and flat there. And they're typically going to have a sound tower. This is not for a Broadway engagement, so this is part of our rep plot for audio. This will be a sound tower. You just want to sneak it behind here into the smoke pocket. And then going into the smoke pocket, there's going to be some power right there. Or if they need, right here. Or if they need to control it with a dimmer, you're just going to go through the mouse hole and connect it up to one of our dimmers backstage. Lovely. Yeah, pretty simple stuff. And then, just make sure to take that down at the end of the night once they're gone. Or if you're coming in for a work call the next day, you can just grab it then. But make sure to just get it out of the way, get all your stuff out of the way so that the technical directors can come back and set these chairs back in place. Great. Signers will typically come in. It really depends. Sometimes they come in before the house opens. A lot of the time after the house opens, they start walking in. So you're just going to want to look for them. They typically wear black. So keep your eye out for them. They'll set their stuff down and get seated. You're going to go up to them, introduce yourself, just let them know if there's any like weird atmospheric stuff. They likely will have seen the show the night before, so they're pretty aware of what's going to happen. But if there's stuff like confetti or like fire, if there's anything or geysers behind them, like here in the side here, right in front of the proscenium, just make them aware of that because they're typically not ready if there's stuff like firing really loudly right behind them. So just make them aware of that. Make them aware of any sudden blackouts, so they're prepared for that when the lights turn off on them. Stuff like that. And just introduce yourself to them. Let them know that you're there in case they need anything. All right. Open caption. This is typically going to be on a matinee show, so you have a little time to take it down before your lunch break after the show comes down. Once you get into the booth, we have a loom here. That's going to be 2 50-foot Edison connectors that are going opposite directions, and also 1 Ethernet line. It's going to be over here on stage left in the vestibule in the smoke pocket. You can see in this picture right over here, I have a more close-up image. What it's going to happen is that the 3 connectors that are loomed right together, they're going to go up and through the mouse hole. I tried to feed around like 10 feet into there. And then I have the rest of it coiled right here, the slack right at the foot of the ladder. And then I have the female end for the Edison going over to here, right next to the subwoofer, right around the corner for the screen. And then I have the other one plugged into the wall here. The reason we do it like this is because the open captioner has a surge protector, which they can use to toggle the power on and off for their screen. The Ethernet line is going to travel back into the vestibule here and back over backstage where they can get a hardline Ethernet connection. I'm going to show you what that looks like. Same picture here. I like to attach these. We have some safety cables on here, just a little bit of strain relief. They're also going to drop you, I forgot to mention, a gray cable that they bring with them so they can connect their computer up to the display. And so I like to run it backstage. It looks a little bit cleaner instead of jumping it over the box boom themselves and running that just right along the wall. You can see this is where all the slack is. Here's the back of the screen where it typically will be here. You're going to want to put it right on the back here. I use a little bit of gaff tape just to make it look clean. And then you're going to want to plug it into the bottom port of the display. Here's backstage through the mouse hole. You can see that the Ethernet cable plugs into the our Wi-Fi outlet here. It's marked with a red dot so that you know that that's our internet. And then you can see this is what the box boom looks like, where you have our cables here and their cable dropped. Yep, nothing too crazy with that. And then just at the end of the show, make sure to get all your looms and stuff out of the way. I will mention that sometimes audio will plug into the internet here. So you're going to want to use an unmanaged switch. I'll try to make sure that there's an unmanaged switch available right next to the rack so that if you need to plug that in, you can just plug in the power here and then, connect it up very easily so that no one's getting unplugged. Great. I don't think I know what else to mention here. Always just be very courteous, especially with the open captioners and the ASL. You're there to help them be successful because they're also performing too. So they're going to be relying on you to make sure that everything runs smoothly. Be very courteous, make sure that you're available to them and meeting every one of their needs. Great. I think that's about it, and I want to thank you very much for tuning in and wish you all the best. Good luck.